Welcome, everybody, to this deep dive into personal growth. How do we achieve lasting peace and happiness? Big questions, huh? We'll be exploring excerpts from Jordan's book.
His ideas on Hexagram 5 and how it relates to like overcoming negativity and really becoming, our best selves.
Right. So Jordan kicks things off with this quote. It's from
Right.
Shantideva. All happiness in the world arises from wishing others to be happy. All the suffering arises from wishing oneself to be happy. I mean, wow. Powerful stuff.
It is, yeah. Really gets you thinking, about your own motivations. And it kind of leads right into one of Jordan's, I guess you could say, core ideas, right? Like this idea that when we're, always prioritizing our own happiness above above everything else, we're actually kind of setting ourselves up for more suffering. Ironic, isn't it?
Interesting. So we're actually like getting in our own way.
Exactly. He calls this level 1 consciousness. Basically, it's like, this state where we're so focused on our own happiness, like that any little thing that could, disrupt that happiness becomes like a huge deal. And he argues that this kind of thinking actually feeds this thing called the negativity bias. You familiar with that?
Yeah, vaguely. I know it's like our brain's tendency to focus on the negative, but how does level 1 consciousness tie into that?
Well, it's like this. Our brains are kind of wired to like scan for threats, for problems. It's a survival thing, right? But when our main goal is personal happiness, anything that could, mess with that happiness becomes a threat. So we end up focusing on the negative, like way more than we need to. We get caught in this loop.
Yeah, I see that. So how do we break free from this cycle?
Well, that's where Jordan introduces a few really key concepts. He talks suppress, agree, disagree. It's basically like our knee-jerk reaction, to any kind of unpleasant thought or feeling.
Oh, yeah, I do that all the time.
Right. It's like we either try to push those feelings away or we get totally caught up in them or we just, argue with ourselves about them. And then he also talks about this thing called gag, which stands for grip and grasp. And that's, it's that tendency we have to just cling to what we want and resist, the things that we don't want. It's a constant struggle, really.
So it's like we're really good at making ourselves miserable.
Yeah, in a way. But the good news is that, we can learn to respond differently. There are ways to break free from these patterns. And that's where, this idea of Hexagram 5 comes in. It's like it offers a totally different way of dealing with, all this reactivity.
Interesting. Okay, I'm definitely intrigued. Tell me more about this Hexagram 5.
So it's all about needing, attending, waiting, and arriving. And Jordan, he links this directly to the idea of becoming our own ideal parental figure.
Okay, now that's an interesting concept. What exactly does he mean by that? I'm not sure I follow.
Okay, so think about it this way: when we're kind of stuck in this level 1 consciousness, right? It's almost like we're acting like a child who's constantly looking, for external validation, for security. We're looking for that comfort from other people. But what if we could learn to like provide that for ourselves?
So instead of looking outside for approval or comfort, we learn to be our own source of strength and support.
Exactly.
Right.
And that's where, the waiting part of Hexagram 5 comes in. Instead of, immediately reacting to every thought and feeling, when to pause, to just like observe, to create space for a more mindful response, to be more, like that ideal parent we maybe didn't have.
I see. So it's about cultivating that inner stillness, becoming that source of comfort for ourselves.
Yes, exactly. And it's from that place of stillness that we can actually access what Jordan calls the level 2 consciousness, which is, equanimity. Imagine being like the eye of the storm. Everything is like swirling around you, but you remain calm, and centered.
Right. That sounds incredibly peaceful. But how do we actually like get there? I mean, waiting patiently doesn't exactly come naturally to me. It's tough.
I hear you. It's a practice for sure. It takes time and effort, but it's possible. And in the next part of our deep dive, we'll explore some specific techniques, that Jordan offers for cultivating that patience, for becoming our own ideal parental figure. It's really powerful stuff.
Okay, so we're learning to like be the calm, in the midst of the storm. That's level 2 consciousness, right? Equanimity. But I'm still a little fuzzy on how that waiting thing from Hexagram 5 actually helps us become our own ideal parental figure. Like, how does that actually work?
Yeah, I get it. It's one of those things that Sounds great in theory, but can be kind of, tough to put into practice. Uh, think about it like this. When you were a kid, maybe you craved a parent, right? Who
Mhm.
was patient, understanding, who didn't, freak out at your every little outburst or mistake. Someone who could like really help you make sense of the world.
Oh, totally. Like someone who just like got me, you
Yeah.
know, someone who could help me soothe my anxieties.
Exactly. And a lot of times, we don't get that ideal parenting that we needed, right? So as adults, we're still kind of searching for it, externally, hoping that someone else will provide that sense of security and support.
And that's where the waiting comes in. Like how do we bridge that gap?
Exactly, yeah. So by learning to pause, right? To observe our thoughts and feelings without immediately reacting, we're essentially we're stepping into that parental role, for ourselves. Instead of getting like swept away by the storm of emotions, we become the steady presence, right? The anchor.
Okay, yeah, I see that.
Yeah.
So instead of looking for someone else to soothe us, we learn to soothe ourselves, to be that calm, understanding presence. It's like we're giving ourselves permission to feel those feelings without judgment.
Exactly, precisely. And that's a huge step, right? Towards equanimity, towards that level 2 consciousness that Jordan talks about. It's about recognizing that we have the inner resources, to provide ourselves with the love, the compassion, the understanding that maybe we didn't always get, growing up.
Wow. This is really resonating with me. So how do we actually practice this waiting? Like what does that look like in real life? Can you give me an example?
Sure, sure. So let's say you're stuck in traffic, right? And you start to feel that familiar like rush of frustration, impatience. But instead of, honking the horn or letting that anger take over, you take a deep breath, and you
Okay.
just acknowledge the feeling. You say to yourself, okay, I'm feeling frustrated right now. It's understandable. Traffic jams are are annoying.
Right.
You're not suppressing the feeling, but you're not letting it control you either.
Right. So it's about like creating that space between the feeling and the reaction.
Exactly. You're giving yourself a chance to choose a different response, right? One that's more aligned with the kind of, ideal parent you want to be for yourself. Maybe you put on like some calming music or you use that time to practice gratitude, for the things that you do have in your life.
Right. So it's about responding with wisdom instead of reacting with emotion. It's like we're saying to ourselves, it's okay to feel this way. I'm here for you.
Yeah, that's a beautiful way to put it. You're offering yourself that unconditional love and acceptance that maybe, you didn't always receive as a child. And that's the heart of becoming your own ideal parental figure. When we're constantly reacting from that place of level 1 consciousness, that prioritizing personal happiness mode, we're actually creating more suffering, for ourselves and for the people around us. We're more likely to lash out, right?
Right.
To make impulsive decisions, to get caught up in drama and conflict.
So by learning to wait, to cultivate, equanimity, we're not only benefiting ourselves, but also like improving our relationships with other people.
Absolutely. When we're grounded and centered, we're able to show up for others in a more authentic way, more compassionate way. We're less reactive, more understanding, and just more capable of offering genuine support.
Okay, yeah, I'm convinced this waiting thing is definitely worth exploring. But I gotta admit, I still struggle with that negativity bias.
Hmm.
It's like I know I should be more positive, but it's like my brain is just hardwired to focus on the negative. It's tough.
Oh, that's totally normal. Remember, our brains, have evolved to scan for threats and problems. It's a survival mechanism, But the good news is that we can retrain our brains. So it's all about like acknowledging and validating your thoughts and feelings. Even the negative ones, right? Instead of trying to like push them away or argue with them, you just recognize their presence, You give yourself permission to actually feel them.
Okay, so if I'm like feeling anxious about a presentation at work, I wouldn't try to tell myself, don't be silly, there's nothing to worry about,
Mm,
like that kind of thing.
exactly, yeah. Because that usually just makes the anxiety worse, right? It's like you're fighting against yourself. Instead, you might say something like, "Okay, I'm feeling anxious about this presentation. That's understandable. It's a big deal, and I want to do well."
Right. So I'm acknowledging the feeling, but without judgment. Like it's okay to feel this way.
Exactly. Yeah, you got it. And the key here is to really notice how that validation makes you feel, you know? Often just acknowledging the feeling without resistance, it can create this sense of relief, of spaciousness. It's like you're taking the power away from the negative thought by simply observing it.
Right, right. It's like we're saying to ourselves, it's okay to feel this way. You're not a bad person for having these thoughts and feelings. It's like offering ourselves like that compassion.
That's a great way to put it. Yeah. And this ties back to the whole concept of, becoming our own ideal parental figure. Imagine a loving parent comforting a child who's upset, right?
Right.
They wouldn't dismiss the child's feelings or tell them to just, get over it. They would offer comfort, understanding, reassurance.
So we're offering that same kind of compassion and understanding to ourselves. It's like
Hmm.
we're learning to be that loving parent for ourselves, the one we maybe didn't always have.
Right. Exactly, exactly. And that's what this NB exercise is all about, It's a practice in self-compassion
Hmm.
and learning to be there for ourselves in a way that maybe, we didn't always experience growing up.
Man, I love that. It's like we're rewiring our brains,
Yeah.
to respond to challenges with kindness and understanding instead of criticism and judgment.
Yeah. And as we do that, right, as we cultivate that inner sense of safety and support, we naturally become more resilient, less reactive to stress. We're able to navigate life's, ups and downs with greater ease and grace. We're not constantly fighting ourselves.
Right. So it's not just about like feeling better in the moment. It's about actually changing our whole approach to life.
Right.
Becoming more resilient, more compassionate, not just towards ourselves, but towards others too.
Yeah, exactly. It's like when we're not constantly battling our own negative thoughts and feelings,
Yeah.
we have so much more capacity for empathy, for compassion. We're able to show up for others in a more authentic way, more supportive way.
Wow. This has been such an eye-opening deep dive. I'm walking away with so many valuable insights about personal growth, about equanimity, about the power of becoming our own ideal parental figure.
Yeah.
It's really powerful stuff.
I'm so glad to hear that. Remember the journey to lasting peace and happiness. It's a lifelong process, right? And it's full of twists and turns. But by cultivating, self-awareness, practicing self-compassion, and embracing the wisdom of Hexagram 5, we can navigate those twists and turns with greater clarity,
Yeah.
with more resilience, with more joy, really.
Absolutely. This is definitely a conversation I'll be revisiting. And to our listeners, we encourage you to explore these concepts further. See how they can help you cultivate greater peace and happiness in your own lives. Remember, the power to transform your experience, it lies within you.